right. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Norfolk School Committee meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. I'll start this meeting the way we always do by reading our mission statement. The Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. I have a roll call, please.
Peter Schwalbe.
Lauren Vivas. Grace Lockhead. Medora Champagne.
Lisa Sheldon.
Ingrid O'Larney.
We'll move on to public comment. We have 6 speakers tonight. We are dictated by a policy we follow very closely, so as there are 6 speakers, you each have 2 minutes to speak. If you could come up to the microphone, introduce yourself. Once you do that, I will hit go on my little stopwatch. When you hear it ring, if you could just please respect our time limits and stop speaking so we could stay on schedule. We do encourage people to present their remarks in a respectful manner. So our first speaker is Birch Duggins-Worth.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Birch Duggins-Worth. I live at 31 Robin Road.
Can't hear.
Sorry. I'm Birch Duggins-Worth. I live at 31 Robin Road. My 2 oldest children go to FK. Thank you. And my youngest child will be going to kindergarten in the fall. I wanted to speak because I was here last school committee meeting and heard a lot of parents concerned about the changes to the health framework. It's not a curriculum that is here yet. And I just wanted to respond because I am a transgender man, and so I do have some thoughts on the topic. The first time I looked through the framework, I actually teared up a little bit because my kids have struggled some in school, feeling othered, feeling that they don't belong. And I'm in favor of some of the topics that will be covered because I'm very tired of kids being the only people right now who are allowed to talk about LGBTQ families in school. I'm tired of my kids having to be the ones telling your kids that gender identity and sexuality are things that people ascribe to. When your kids tell mine that our family's weird, I'm tired of it having to be my kids that are telling them they're not. When your kids tell my kids that gay is a bad word, I'm tired of it being my kids that have to tell your kids that it's not a bad word. I would like for them to be able to just be kids. I would like for trained educators to explain in age-appropriate ways that there are families that have 2 dads, there are families that have 2 moms, there are people who do identify as a gender outside of the way that they were assigned at birth. That doesn't mean that you have to believe that it's a thing that you want your kids to do, but it is a fact that there are people in this community who are trans, there are adults, and there are children. I don't want my kids to have to be put in the position where they're defending our family structure and my identity. And that's where I'll stop there.
Thank you. Sue Savoy.
Can you actually hear me better if I do that? Hi, my name is Susan Savoy. I live at 45 Myrtle Street. First of all, I want to thank all of you being on the school committee, and I want to thank everybody who's part of the school administration, all the people who work in the schools, the school personnel. I myself am a public school employee. I know how hard the work is, day in, day out. We don't get to go to the bathroom when we want to. I appreciate so much everyone's position, and I appreciate people being here to listen to one another, and that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking that we listen to one another, that we as a community come together and we work this out. We respect one another. We listen to people who are living the experience of whatever they're living. We all have our own lived experiences. I want to ask that we strongly support adequate funding of our public schools because they're absolutely critical to the well-being of our democracy. I want to ask that we consider how important it is to update our extremely outdated health framework. It's time. It's past time. So I'm here to inform myself. I'm here to understand the process. I'm here to listen to people. I'm here to listen to everybody. Truly, I think that's what we need to do. We need to listen to one another as a community. And that's what I'm calling for, that we have civil dialogue and that we have our listening ears on. I didn't think I'd end like that, but.
Next, we have Jack Oliveri.
Hi. The following is from the Oracle of DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Quote, "We view the school committee as the publicly elected or appointed equivalent of a board of directors of a corporation, which in this case is a school system. The school committee has oversight and responsibility for the school system. It sets the direction in which the system must go and establishes criteria to determine its goals and policies are being met. Also, the board must be responsible to the community it serves. The board is a legislative body that develops, evaluates, and oversees education policies. The superintendent serves as the school committee's chief executive officer and educational advisor. Also, the school board must be responsible to the community it serves. It is a legislative body that develops, evaluates, and oversees education policies. The superintendent is the professional educator chosen by the board to implement policies and to provide professional leadership for the district." End quote. In any corporation, when the CEO does not follow the direction or guidance of the board of directors, the CEO is fired. I've seen this happen myself. There's never any question about who is in charge. With regard to the new health and physical education framework, Massachusetts schools are not required to teach sex education, but instead allows local school boards to make such decisions, and if sex education is offered, the curriculum is not required to include sexual orientation or gender identity. Parents and guardians can exempt their children from any portion of sex education. As with all frameworks, school districts must decide at the local level which curriculum and materials educators will use. To the school committee, you were elected to do a job. You need to step it up by documenting and enforcing district policies and community input, and do it with a sense of urgency that has not been evident to date. You are not a rubber stamp. You are the board of directors, so act like it. To the district administrators, stop pushing optional woke policies you want and calling them inclusion. Tell every child to live with and respect everyone and move on. Focus all resources on our terrible declining MCAS scores. Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Wynn.
Sorry, I didn't take my coat. I have to leave to get a child. Very strange sitting on this side of the table. Hello. Jennifer Wynn, Hemlock Lane. Dear Norfolk Public Schools Administration Team and School Committee, I'm speaking today to publicly comment on the wonderful chorus program offered at Freeman Kennedy School. But most of all, I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank Mrs. Mary Musial, the teacher. My daughter decided to join chorus this year, and it has been the best experience for both her learning musical terms and theory as well as vocal skills. It was also a very positive experience socializing with peers. My understanding is that in a short few years, this program has grown into a large chorus ensemble of 80-something children, which is quite impressive for a school system this size. It's quite an accomplishment for a school program, and it is no doubt due to Mrs. Musial's gifted talent at teaching music and having fun. While these are all fine compliments, they are not what bring me here today with the need to speak at public comment. I come here today to express my amazement at the Winter Chorus concert performed last month at the Freeman Kennedy School. The music was delightful, and both the audience and the students smiled and laughed throughout. It was infectious and perfect for the holiday spirit. The musical choices were inclusive and just the right amount for a school work night. Even my husband, whom if you know isn't always the most amused person, smiled and laughed at many of the special moments. This musical choreography that accompanied the songs was also very well done. Mrs. Musial is a gifted music teacher in Norfolk Public Schools, is lucky to have her, and we are grateful for the chorus opportunity. Thank you very much. It was really special. So anybody who has young children, I would, if you can, encourage them to take chorus. I would do that, and I still have time. Okay. Oh, so with that, I will say that as a school committee, being a former school committee member, we did look at a lot of options, and we are tasked with making recommendations that are the best for the students, and that is why we decided to go with the expansion. Thank you.
Benjamin Sprague.
Good evening, Benjamin Sprague, 264 Main Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again tonight. I want to address several critical concerns about the inclusion of gender identity in the curriculum and the broader priorities of our school district. First, I find it troubling that DESE claims gender identity is not part of sexual health, despite its explicit classification under Practice 6, Sexual Health 5.6.sh in the Massachusetts Health and Physical Frameworks. If this material is being taught, I would hope it's being delivered by a certified health or physical education teacher, as general education teachers are not qualified to teach sexual health standards. This raises questions about the district's adherence to professional teaching requirements and DESE's own guidelines. Second, I question why this material is being prioritized as supplemental education when a district has one of the lowest MCAS scores in the surrounding towns. Shouldn't we first focus on fulfilling our primary education responsibilities, ensuring proficiency in reading, math, writing, and science before allocating resources to these programs? Third, I want to address the financial implications. We may be facing yet another budget shortfall this year, yet funds are being directed towards programs like this. What surveys or data show this curriculum is necessary? I, as a parent, have not received any survey regarding social-emotional learning or its perceived needs for my children. Is bullying truly a significant issue in our schools? If so, what data supports this decision? Transparency and accountability are essential when spending taxpayer dollars. Lastly, I find it downright weird that the district is introducing concepts involving gender identity to children under 12 years old. These are highly sensitive and complex topics. Why is there such a focus on sexualizing young children instead of addressing their foundational academic needs? This kind of approach not only undermines parents' trust, but also risks creating unnecessary controversies. I want to make it clear that if the district continues to deny opt-out options for these lessons, I and others are prepared to pursue litigation to enforce compliance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 71, Section 32A. This is a legal right, not a suggestion, and non-compliance will have consequences. I urge the committee to prioritize academic achievement, ensure transparency in decision-making, and provide parents with data and opportunities for input regarding supplemental programs. Anything less is a failure to serve the primary mission of our schools. Thank you for your time and attention.
And finally, we have Jen Oliver.
John Oliver, 7 Hill Street. I wanted to say first, express the gratitude I have for everyone who has served on this committee. You've been elected by Norfolk to lead our school charges, and I also want to extend that appreciation to our school administration and teachers, as well as the school building committee. The time has come for action, so I appreciate that action has been put forth. Our teachers and administrators have been making it work for a long time. They will continue to make it work. But we need the space. We need to give the space so our children can benefit from having a good educational experience so that they can have something other than music on a cart, tech on a cart, potentially art on a cart, so that they can have a full curriculum. And so I'm very thankful that people volunteered their time to do their due diligence and have put forward the best option we have available now. So I hope everyone will take a chance to, I know we have differing viewpoints, take the chance to learn from them, learn what the committees have done. They have done a lot of work. It's been 7 years in the making, and the time for action and to move forward for our schools, for our town, for our future is now. Thank you.
Thank you to all the public commenters tonight. We appreciate your engagement. If you didn't get to finish and you feel like you have more to say, you can always email the committee, and we are happy to continue the conversation. Moving on to correspondence, there is none. The school committee chair report, we have a remarkable gift to approve. We have a gift from the Norfolk PTO in the amount of $14,694.90, and this says it's for the Museum of Science kits. Jen Wolf gave a little bit more detail on that. She says it's the youth engineering curriculum enhancements that will provide engineering lessons to students in all grades. And that's so great because engineering is such an important field these days. So I would be looking for a motion to accept this gift.
So moved. I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Beyond, that may be one of the largest gifts we've ever received, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And such a cool initiative.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is what did I do? I lost my phone. Okay, we're going to move on to committee and liaison reports now. So I will hand it over to the policy committee.
Sure. Policy met on Friday the 10th and discussed a few things, so we have a few things to bring forward for some actual action today, which is great. First and foremost, we've been having some discussions around school fundraising, fundraising events happening within the school, and the policies that we have currently around those items. As we took a deeper dive and looked at what we had, some of those were kind of incongruent or redundant to a certain extent, so we have brought forward a couple of things to look at. First and foremost, we have policy KHA, which is Exhibit 2. We have made an incidental change to some of the language in that policy, adding item 3 under the second paragraph.
We can't hear anything back here.
Okay. I will do my very best, but
Your microphone is on the other side.
I'm not sure that this really amplifies me that much. Again, I apologize. I will try to talk as if I am telling my children it's time to go to school. So, all right. Certainly. For tonight, unfortunately, we have what we have. So I will try to project, as will everybody else. So, sure. Exhibit 2 is policy KHA. There's an incidental change to the language to include item number 3 under the second paragraph heading. Fundraisers that involve direct marketing to students has been added into the lexicon of what is not permissible under fundraising. This is an incidental change, and so we are bringing it forward for a vote this evening. Before we discuss a vote, I would say that there's also a policy that we're looking to remove that is redundant to this policy. So those are the 2 votes that we're looking at for policy. So I guess we can kind of proceed as the chair would deem fit as far as votes are concerned, but we'd be looking for a vote to add the incidental change to policy KHA.
Looking for a motion to accept the policy as written.
So moved.
A second? That would be, have to be Peter.
Peter, you'll have to second this one because they're part of
We're on
policy.
policy.
So it's about the incidental changes to the public schools.
Okay, I second.
Any further discussion? So it was just this one line.
This is just the incidental change, yes.
Which exhibit was that again?
Exhibit 2.
Oh, it is, okay. Thank you.
Number 3.
Any further discussion on the incidental change?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, moving on to the next item. We have the first reading of policy JJE, student fundraising activities. So this is a bit more than an incidental change. So we will be bringing forward this on a few different occasions. This is just the first reading. There's no action associated with this. But again, it does go to fundraising within the schools. So no
Just
vote.
a question on it. The activities that publicly reward or recognize the individuals, our classrooms, our grades. Do we do that with Coin Wars that everyone loves? Like it's Coin Wars, we wouldn't be able to do that anymore.
But I don't know if they're like
It would have to
rewarded
be
with something
restructured.
Yeah,
It-
we would
okay.
It would have to be restructured. We had a lot of discussion about that during the policy meeting, and based on feedback that we received with the previous fundraiser and conversations that we had, we felt that it was best to be consistent.
Yeah.
And so we would have to look at how to adjust those so that they don't individually reward classrooms.
Okay.
And we have engaged with the PTO and school councils to try to look at different ways for that.
Great.
Any other first reading discussion? Okay. Next, we have oh, I'm out of sync. We have a new, did we have this as an exhibit? Exhibit 4.
Fundraiser form.
Yep, it's a fundraising form for any proposed fundraisers within the school that would create essentially a checklist for anyone who was looking to initiate a new fundraiser, or I guess even sort of, this will be sort of a blank slate situation. So any fundraisers going forward, the individuals proposing those or the organizations proposing those, typically it's a school partner, would need to move through this checklist with the administration well in advance of the commencement of a fundraiser to make sure that all of the policies in play around fundraisers are being met and adhered to. So again, there's no action on that. The next item we have is policy KHA-JJE. We are looking for a vote to remove the policy because it is redundant to all of the other fundraising policies. We have, the only thing included in this policy that was not originally in KHA is, I believe, what we have added to KHA.
Yeah, I think what the confusion was that many years ago, Norfolk chose to merge two policies that were separate previously through the MASC organization. There's a policy around public solicitations and fundraising in the schools, and a separate policy for fundraisers that involve students. So we have policy KHA is around public solicitation, JJE is student fundraisers. Prior to COVID, we had updated policy KHA. We had not updated JJE, which we've just brought to you for first reading. So because we are separating those policies out, this joint policy is redundant. So we're looking to remove that and keep the two other policies separate.
So I would be looking for a motion to remove policy KHA/JJE.
I will move to remove this.
If you second, we can still talk about it.
Second.
Further discussion.
It's completely redundant?
It is. They took the two separate policies and merged them into one, but that's confusing because if you're running a student fundraiser or a fundraiser that involves student participation, there's one set of guidelines, public solicitation, so that would be Norfolk Lions or other agencies running a fundraiser that they're advertising or working through the schools has a different set of guidelines. So we've separated them back out because it's clearer and easier for management, which makes this policy redundant. Does that make sense? And some things, when we went through originally and revised KHA, some things are governed by statute and thus not required to be in a policy. Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, for example, activities relating to sectarian religious matters, that's not in the other policy.
Right, that was removed when the school committee voted the first revision of KHA because that's governed by statute.
Got it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then final matter for policy update. Given, as I said, the policy committee met last Friday, which was January 10th. Given the dialogue around the health education frameworks and the fact that there was going to be an update this evening, that was also on our agenda just to assess the logistics of what that process was going to look like, but then also whether or not there were any existing policies that may need to be reviewed and kind of incorporated into that dialogue as we're moving through the process that I think Ingrid is going to lay out shortly. So currently, we have policy IHAM, which discusses health education and the district's commitment to including health education as part of its curriculum. And also that references health education's inclusion in Chapter 71, Section 1 as a required aspect of public education in Massachusetts. In addition, we have another policy. IHAMR, which is the existing policy around health education exemptions within the district. As part of what we're going to be doing moving forward, assessing the new frameworks, the policy committee is committed to coordinating with outside counsel to see if this exemption procedure would benefit from or be available for, I guess, updates or modifications that may address some of the feedback we're receiving from the community. So at this point, this will remain on our agenda, I would imagine, for the foreseeable future, and discussions around both policies would likely remain on the agenda, as well as we seek feedback from outside counsel to see what is permissible, and in addition, feedback from DESE to the extent that that may be forthcoming, I guess, because I know that it is still a relatively new topic for most districts in the Commonwealth, and I don't think that the questions that we have received are specific or independent to Norfolk. So that is where we stand in that process.
Is it potentially that we'll be looking at a reading of the policy in February? Is that what you're
I
thinking?
don't know that we'll have it in February, but when I give the health update, we are not teaching the new standards at this time and don't anticipate rolling those out until next fall. So we would have this policy in place and ready for review and adoption prior to the implementation of new standards.
So you're currently looking at making it concurrent to the framework.
No, I think it'll be done before that, but it's probably going to take more than one meeting to finalize it. We have to get it through legal counsel and get direction on that. But the policy regarding opt-out provisions.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to finalize it in one meeting.
Oh, okay.
Good. I was just asking if what Medora was alluding to was whether we're going to have
A first reading.
discussion of it at the next meeting, or a first reading, like a draft reading. That's what I was asking.
I think that might be an ambitious timeframe, just realistically speaking, considering that we're coordinating with outside individuals. And, I think that there is a understanding that this is something that should be looked at. And, I think right now our next step is to receive feedback from outside counsel. That would probably be what happens at the next meeting that we have. Beyond that, at that point, we can have a discussion surrounding what changes could be feasible, what changes might be able to be incorporated into the existing policy, and the adoption process would follow from there. So I think that it would be
March.
disingenuous to say it would be in February. And I think that, certainly March, April seems like a more realistic timeframe.
But I think, regardless of the time frame, we are committed to looking into it, to doing what we can to make sure that everybody feels, we can do what we can within the parameters we're given to make people feel comfortable. So.
Is that it for policy?
That is it for policy.
Budget?
All right, well, we just had our budget subcommittee meeting. Sorry, we were a little bit late. I don't know how much detail I want to go into the budget information, as it looks like after the superintendent report, we have a more extensive budget update. So there's going to be a whole lot of information. Again, this year is not going to be really any better than last year. It likely will be worse, but I think we are looking at trying to come into request at the town with like an aggressive number that we can hopefully feel confident that the quality of education is going to be maintained. Miriam and Ingrid both had a bunch of insightful recommendations in regards to budget cuts and shifting things around. Again, they'll go into more detail, so I'm just gonna let Miriam lead the charge shortly.
Norfolk Building Committee, you're back on.
Oh yeah, no updates for the building committee. So yes, building committee update. I'm not going to go into all of an exhaustive forum right now, but I'll just give high-level updates on where we are. So as hopefully everyone here knows, we have a ballot vote coming up on February 1st. Early voting will begin on Tuesday, the 21st, and run through Monday, the 27th. The times that they will be open, it's on the town website as well as the building website. So this vote is a debt exclusion vote for $345,042. And that is for schematic design through bid documents for the proposed Freeman Kennedy expansion. We have another community forum next Tuesday on the 21st. That's going to be 7 o'clock at HOD, also in the library there. There's also a presentation that will be given by Ingrid, and hopefully a couple of the building committee members can be there as well on Wednesday, the 22nd, at the Senior Center here in Norfolk. I will say there has been an uptick in community engagement, which honestly I think is great. And we've been able to compile a relatively robust FAQ that we're going to, I will, kind of bring us through a lot of the questions tonight. I will say that some of the questions we grouped kind of thematically rather than, verbatim. So hopefully if you don't hear, the exact language you used, you'll hear the themes. And we'll get to those answers. I will say also that we're going to be posting that on the Norfolk Building website, those FAQs, and if there are questions that are not answered by us, we tried to be pretty thorough, but we want people to be as informed as possible, so continue to submit questions. You can submit them to me directly, Medora, Ingrid, I'm sure. We have our building committee website, our email, so please, don't be shy. And we'll continue to update and get that information out. Because we want people to be honestly as informed as possible before the vote. I think that's really important. So what I will do now is take the questions that we received and moderate a bit of a Q&A with Medora and Ingrid, who are both on the committee with me.
And yourself. Don't
right.
be shy.
I will also not be shy in adding any feedback that anybody, I feel is needed. So just to kind of move it along, I'll address them to each of you, but you can jump in at any point. So the first question is, what funds are being requested and voted on in the special election, and what is the expected impact to the taxpayer if these funds are approved? So Medora, could you answer that one?
Sure. So as you just very specifically stated, what is currently being requested is, I will shorten it to approximately $4.3 million. The purpose of those funds is to fund schematic design through construction document generation. Ideally, the goal would be that at the end of that, it is the stated goal. At the end of the expenditure of those funds, the town would then be presented with a firm construction bid for the completion of the final project in its entirety, similar to the process that was followed for the fire station. So it would eliminate any unknowns about the overall final cost of the project to proceed in 2 phases. What is included in the process is essentially what it sounds like. It is all of the, we take it from a high-level design at feasibility into the nuts and bolts design of what the process would look like. So the fees include the architect fees, but in addition to that, all of the subcontractors that would be employed by the architect to finalize the design, including civil engineers, landscape architects, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, building code consultants, an accessibility compliance consultant, acoustical engineers, technology consultants, and any other of the remaining laundry list of folks who come in to make sure that the building is functioning the way that it needs to be functioning. In addition to that, approximately $900,000, which is, I am remembering that from a document, so approximately is approximately. Sure. Notes taken. Approximately $900,000 is also attributed to the retention and utilization of an owner's project manager as part of the $4.3 million. We are required to retain an OPM, as they're called in shorthand, due to the scope, size, and cost of the project. That is a statutory requirement. The OPM comes in to represent the interests of the town and school district throughout both the design phase and eventually the construction phase, should the project move forward. This $4.3 million is part of the overall soft costs associated with this project. It is not in addition to the projected overall cost of the project. It is a component of the overall projected cost of the project. If this debt exclusion is successful, the average homeowner in Norfolk would see an increase in their tax bill of approximately $170 annually. That reflects only the debt exclusion for the $4.3 million. It is a component of what will eventually the entire exposure would be from a tax perspective, but that is just the first step. So I think that answers
Question number 2.
Well, you asked in question number 1 the same question, but yes, I jumped ahead. So, and that would be reflected in the fiscal year 2026 tax bill.
Perfect. Thank you. So what is included in the project cost estimate? So we've gotten a lot of questions about, is furniture, technology, overhead, all of that. Ingrid, can you start with that one?
So the total cost for the Freeman Kennedy expansion project was estimated just in August 2024 at $37.9 million. The estimate was developed in anticipation of the project not beginning until late spring and with the delivery date of the fall of 2027. So it does include in the estimate an estimated construction escalation cost. Additionally, the hard construction costs for the building include all of the costs associated with building the 2-story addition to the Freeman Kennedy that connects the back 2 wings of the school, as well as all of the equipment that would be necessary for a new preschool playground, modifications to the existing roadway. The soft cost estimate that Medora talked about earlier includes the design costs for schematic design through the development of construction documents, and that will allow the town to enter with a bid in hand before bringing the project forward so that you know the actual cost. Additionally, soft costs include all of the furniture, fixtures, and technology equipment for the additional classrooms.
Thank you. So we've had a lot of questions over the years and this year about the enrollment growth and the projections that were done. So Medora, can you talk a little bit about the demographic studies? I think you were part of here for all of them.
Sure. Yeah, that may be aging me, but sure, happy to. There have been 3 demographic studies completed to date regarding current demographics and future projected enrollment growth in the Norfolk Public Schools. Initially, an organization called NESDEC completed 2 studies for us, one in 2019 and one in 2021. Both of those studies reflected an anticipated growth in enrollment, and as we watched enrollment over those years in between the 2, we saw it matching fairly closely to what the projections were. More recently, in 2024, as part of the school building committee work that has been done on this issue, a different organization was retained to provide a second set of eyes on the demography, and we retained demographic analytical advisors. So all of the reports that have been generated so far are available on the expansion project website. Findings of all 3 of the studies have been very consistent. The most recent DAA studies provides demographic projections through 2035 and anticipates an increase of 204 students into the school system over the next 10 years. So the DAA study notes that all children in Norfolk, that not all children in Norfolk typically attend the Norfolk Public Schools. However, based on an analysis of private and homeschool data that we were able to review and through some surveying that was done, I believe, as well, the study predicts that we will not see an increase in homeschooling and outplacing in the coming years. Approximately 5% of children who would be school-age children, thank you, Ingrid, within Norfolk are educated in an alternative setting. That has been a consistent number and is projected to remain a consistent number. And typically we see those school-age children being either homeschooled or they're receiving private schooling. So In short, 3 studies over the past 7 years, all consistent with growth, all projecting growth of around 200, additional students over the next 10 years, in addition to the existing student population that we currently have today.
Yeah. And I will say, as Medora said, they are online and they're incredibly thorough. So if you're looking for some dry reading or are really interested in stats, take a peek. So there have been a lot of questions about if we could solve for some of this problem with increasing class sizes or potentially adding paraprofessionals to assist with those larger classes to make up for the difference. Ingrid, can you kind of explain our thoughts there?
So we have looked at this. If the district chose to raise class sizes in grades 3 to 6 to the maximum class size of 25 and the maximum class size of 21 in grades kindergarten through 2, we would be able to accommodate just under half of the anticipated new enrollment growth. It would require, if we were to choose to do that, it would require that art and music instruction continue to be delivered on a cart at H. Olive Day, and would also prevent the restoration of a technology or computer lab at the lower schools. The change in class size also would put Norfolk significantly above all of our neighboring communities who, if you go to the website and you look at our baseline and benchmark report, you can see the average class size in the region is between 19 and 20. Also, if you look across the state, only 25% of elementary students across all of Massachusetts are currently being educated in classrooms above 21.1 students. So Norfolk students would be above all of our regional partners as well as significantly above the state average. Additionally, we have 2 major charter schools in the catchment area for Norfolk. Their class sizes are lower than what we would be looking at in Norfolk, and the district would certainly be at risk of losing students to local charter schools. When students exit the district, the state aid and funds for those students follow the student. So we would be at risk of losing significant funding out of the annual operating budget. We could consider hiring additional paraprofessional staff members to support instruction. I think it's important to note paraprofessional staff are not licensed educators. Because of that, they are not able to analyze student assessment data. They are not able to design lessons or instruction or interventions for students that might be struggling. And we're blessed in Norfolk that we have some fabulous paraprofessionals that have been with us for a really long time. They deliver instruction that is developed and designed by the classroom teacher. So when you increase class sizes significantly, there's a significant burden placed on the teacher in terms of designing, overseeing the paraprofessional staff, and delivering instruction. Additionally, over the last 5 years, we've had a really difficult time filling substitute and paraprofessional positions. We currently have 3 vacancies open for paraprofessionals that we've been trying to hire and staff since September. That's not unique to Norfolk. That is true across this region and area. Again, if we increase all class sizes to the maximum allowable, we would still need to identify new space for an additional 100 students that we are expected to receive in the next 5 to 10 years. And larger class sizes do negatively impact curriculum and instruction. I know there's a couple of questions that people had around DESE's recommendations for class size. The Department of Ed did put together a policy statement on class size. They were looking at the value return of moving to what they defined as small class sizes, also looking at the original study done years ago, the STAR study on the impact of class size and achievement. In that study, small class sizes are defined as 13 to 17, and larger class sizes are 19 to 22. We do not have any classes that qualify as small class sizes. Additionally, just years ago, when I first started teaching, I taught first grade. I had 26 students. We don't deliver instruction the way that many of us received instruction in schools. Most instruction is delivered in small groups. Our new literacy program relies on guided reading instruction. When you have a class of 20 students and you have small reading groups, they're meeting regularly with the teacher. As you add additional students, that adds additional groups. It does decrease the amount of direct instruction students receive on a day-to-day basis from the qualified licensed professionals in the classroom.
I think one point, and I'm not sure that this has been made, but just to, I am not an educator, so I will defer. to the data and the feedback from Dr. Alardi on this. I know that the class size issue is something that has been discussed at the school committee level every year since I have been elected to the school committee, and that was in 2018, and I know that it was discussed prior to that. It's discussed as part of the budgeting process every year, from the standpoint of it is always a question of, how many teachers will we need to accommodate incoming classes? What will that do to impact the quality and delivery of instruction? This has consistently been a theme, not just around the question of space and demographics and enrollment studies, but just around the overall quality of education that we're delivering as a district, and it is something that the committee has always been focused on. In addition to that, I do want to clarify, as we consider as a building committee and as the committee as a whole was looking at what the need would be to meet current and anticipated growth over the next decade, there's no perception, at least there has not been on my part, that we are moving to a situation where we will have class sizes lower than what we are seeing currently, which are already defined as larger class sizes. We are trying to prevent a situation where they get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point of being unmanageable and to the point where the quality of instruction is significantly impacted. I don't think that we will see in Norfolk a day when there's a class size of, the small class sizes were 13 to 17. I don't think that that is a thing that is going to happen. The goal of the committee is to, as I said, prevent a worsening of the situation that we are already seeing and to be able to appropriately accommodate all of the school-age children who show up for class. So, just clarifying.
No, that's very helpful. So there's been a lot of questions around preschool and what we are required by the state to provide and what that means for, I know a lot of you know we have a pretty long wait list in Norfolk to get into preschool. So with the proposed addition of, or proposed expansion of Freeman, will that accommodate parents in town who want to send their children to preschool? And what are the recommendations from the state, or what are we required to do?
Sure. So currently we have 6 preschool classrooms. The proposed addition space would have 7, so there's an additional classroom. We are required by law to provide preschool programming to students as of their 3rd birthday who have disabilities and require that programming. Currently, we have a wait list of 70 families. Our programs are delivered in an integrated setting, which means that approximately half the students in every preschool classroom are students receiving services through special education. The other half are classified as peer models. With the additional space, we would be able to meet what we anticipate for growth in the preschool population requiring services. We are expecting with that projected growth of 200 students that we are going to see growth in the number of students entering the district at age 3 who have specialized needs. It would allow us to bring in some additional peer models into those programs. There's a flex space in the design that we could add an 8th classroom or restructure the layout in the next design phase should we need that 8th classroom. But no, it will not allow all students who have interest into the district. We will not be able to accommodate everyone off of the wait list, although we hope to move more families in. We are not exceeding the state requirements. We are meeting the state requirements for preschool.
Okay. There's some relatively specific questions around how space is being used, so I'll try to go through these quickly. How much of the addition is going to be dedicated to administrative space rather than learning space? Ingrid, you take that?
It's a limited amount. There is, I think the building committee did a really thoughtful job of planning how to address this space problem that we have in the growing enrollment. The intent is to move the special education office suite over to the building addition and put them in the first floor with the preschool. Under the law, again, because we provide preschool programming for students as of their 3rd birthday who have disabilities, the special education director oversees the preschool programming. So she would serve by moving that office suite as the administrator on site, overseeing and managing the early childhood wing. The clerical staff that support the special ed director would also move into that suite and would be responsible for managing entry to the school and all of the clerical tasks associated with that. So without increasing staffing, we are relocating that office Additionally, there's about 4 small offices for our speech and language therapist, OT, physical therapist, the district BCBA, that are located in that small office suite. But the vast majority of the space is classrooms for preschool. So 7 classrooms and an indoor sensory space, a conference room for parent IEP meetings.
So the next question is about before and after school programs, or SAC. I'll give both of you a break and I'll answer it since SAC is near and dear to my heart. So at HOD, SAC uses the art room as well as the cafeteria. So they don't have their own space. At the Freeman Kennedy, there's a small classroom right off of the gym that is used for that programming as well as the gym. During the day, that space is used for early childhood education or programming through Norfolk Rec, not education, programming. And so sometimes SAC at the Freeman also will use the cafeteria and library depending on what programming they have going on. But all shared spaces, they don't have a unique space. So Ingrid, this is one that we've gotten a lot recently. How will the district afford to staff the additional classrooms when the budget is already tight?
Yeah, this is a challenge. So I think there's a couple of things that are important to note. I think at the state level, there's a lot of advocacy around increasing Chapter 70 funding because the cost of education has dramatically increased over the last 20 years, and the formula has not kept up with it. So many districts are experiencing difficult budget years because state funding is not matching the growing educational costs. However, what we would be looking at is as we open in 2027, the new space would not be immediately fully occupied. There would be a few open classrooms. Again, we're building for the projected need in the next 10 years. We anticipate in that first year, we would need an additional full-time custodian to maintain the square footage that's consistent with the ratio that we have now for cleaning staff per square footage. We anticipate we'd need 3 additional classroom teachers to address the enrollment growth in the general education population. We also know that we would need to increase our current music, art, and physical education staffing, probably by 0.2, which is an additional day in the schedule to meet the needs of the new classrooms that we're adding. Over this period of time between now and 2027, we are projecting an increase of 55 students. And those 55 students, the district receives state aid primarily through Chapter 70. On average, per pupil, we're receiving $3,600, and that's just looking at the last couple of years in state aid per pupil. So an additional 55 students entering the district is expected or anticipated to result in close to another $200,000 of state aid. The new building, again, as far as staffing costs, we think that's going to, with the custodian and all of those positions, it will, again, estimated with the COLA increases for all those positions, the cost to be about $346,000. So $200,000 in additional state aid. We may also be eligible for additional state grant funding. There's grant funding that offsets the cost of early childhood programming, and then some will just be costs that the town has to respond to in terms of the growing population of students that we are educating.
Has the district considered modular units, and would that be more cost effective? Medora, can you talk to that?
Sure. So yes is the short answer, but I will go into more detail. So modular units initially were considered in 2017 as part of the original space study that was conducted. They were ruled out at that point for a variety of reasons. I was not part of that space study. I can't speak to it personally. I was not yet on the school committee. However, as we moved forward through the process and began to identify what options might be available or might be considered to address enrollment and the space needs, at fall town meeting in November of 2023, it was requested and determined that a full feasibility study of modular options would be a more than reasonable thing to do given the projected costs of a permanent building addition to this structure that we're currently in, and given the
additional capital items that the town was dealing with, thinking specifically of increases in taxes to the average homeowner from the public safety building, and obviously the fire station that had not yet really come to fruition yet, but was being pipelined. So the school building committee was tasked with looking at pretty much any viable option in alternative to a permanent building addition, and specifically enumerated in their charge was looking at modular options. So there were 3 possible arrangements that were explored for modular solutions, including a 2-story modular structure connected to the back of Freeman Kennedy, a standalone 2-story located along the back roadway off of Freeman Kennedy. So to orient everyone as to where we are now, that would have been connected basically back past these windows, a freestanding 2-story unit back sort of behind this building, generally in that direction. And then the third option was a single-story modular building that would have been located on the front athletic field, so where most of you parked, sort of between the school and where the rec fields are, there is an open space. That is where that would have been located. The building committee worked with the retained architects through a feasibility process that looked at all 3 of these options at a couple of different finish levels. So, the relative finishes being what the siding would look like, what the windows would be made of, sort of what the longevity of the building would look like, essentially, the materials associated with those builds. Estimated costs for the modular options that were looked at ranged from $28.5 million to $32.2 million for the lowest level of finishes. Those structures had a life expectancy of 10 to 15 years. And then the range for the higher level of finish that was considered was $30.4 million to $34.9 million for a higher level finish with a life expectancy of 20 to 25 years. Based upon that feedback, other options that were reviewed, and the projected costs of a permanent building addition, the building committee elected to move forward with recommending the permanent building addition priced at $37.9 million, an estimated price, but with a life expectancy of 50 years. The Norfolk Building Committee voted unanimously against recommending a modular solution based largely on the relatively high cost when compared to a permanent solution, but the lower life expectancy relative to the expenditure of funds.
Thank you. And I know there's a lot of numbers being thrown around, and I want to reiterate, it's all on the website. But we've heard, some people still aren't aware, so we really are trying to get information out as much as we can. So I appreciate bearing with us and going through these. So why was it only an average of 25% used for soft costs? We can probably take this one pretty quickly.
Sure. So soft costs, as we talked about earlier, include a number of different items, including design fees, furniture, fixtures, equipment, technology, and contingency funds. Some fees, like the larger fees, like the OPM, are not established because of the process of qualifying, interviewing, and selecting an OPM, and that process hasn't occurred yet. Again, the fees were the contingencies and fit items, building fixtures, all of that is going to be influenced by the design choices made in the next phase. But at this phase of the project, we are using an estimate, which is a standard industry estimate between 22 and 25% of the overall cost of the building dedicated to soft costs. We are using the upper end of the range, primarily because this addition is being connected to an existing structure. So sometimes there's more unknowns that happen when than you have in a new build in terms of the connection and ADA pieces. So 25 is the higher than average estimate, but we're going with that at this point. This will be refined again as we move into the design phase and an OPM is interviewed and selected.
So as we've said a couple of times, this is designed through bid documents. So how many bids will be sought? Medora, can you take that one?
So This will be put out to bid in compliance with Massachusetts state procurement law. We don't select a certain number of bids, we put it out to bid, and qualified contractors, construction professionals are allowed to bid on it. This is a qualifications-based process, so in the event of multiple bids, you would be looking at working with the qualified lowest bidder. It is not straight low bid. I want to make that clear as well. A project of this scope and size in Massachusetts is governed very strongly by statutes. Chapter 149 is one in particular, but there are some others as well that dictate how a public project like this can move forward through the bid process. So we would receive as many bids as qualified bidders were willing to submit. Ideally, that would be multiple bids so that we have an opportunity to review and assess the qualifications of each of the bidders.
So this next one I know is one that we discussed as a building committee. Oh,
I didn't answer the full question. Did that get?
I think there was a question about what options the town would have if bids came in significantly over what was projected.
Oh, that was me not asking the question
Okay,
appropriately.
I mean, it is a very appropriate question in any situation, but certainly given the amount of money we're discussing at this point. At that point, because we are breaking the debt exclusion process up into two separate phases, so design through construction documents and then a subsequent phase relative to the construction bid, should bids come in significantly higher than are being projected, I mean, I put a fair amount of faith in the estimating process, but, obviously these things can happen. The town would at that point have an opportunity, both at town meeting and again at a ballot, to make a determination to hold on the project if they wanted to. At that point, we would have spent money on the schematic design. The town would have at its disposal a full set of schematic design and construction documents for a future project should a future board, elect to move forward with that as a suggestion. But there is, if this balloons to the point where it was something that was not palatable, there is an opportunity for the town to take an off-ramp, I guess. I think that, that beyond that, that's just me.
And I think the other two possibilities, depending on how much over the anticipated bid price the bids come in, the town could also opt to review and go back to the design phase and see if reductions in scope could occur, if structural or design changes could happen that would result in additional cost savings. You could opt to reduce the contingency fee that's part, but that does increase owner liability. But there are several different pathways that the town could go to consider either, again, reducing the price or delaying or postponing the project.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I do think it's fair to note as well, this design phase is where the value engineering process could be taking place as well, to the extent that if it was seeming as though costs might be escalating, there are, through design up until the generation of the full construction documents, opportunities to look at the project and, scale back during design should it be a situation where we feel that, things might be, for whatever reason, through external contributing factors, costs might be escalating, so.
And just to take the optimist point of view, and it could come in less, and we could be.
It could.
Again, thank you. We discussed this at relative length during the building committee meeting. I don't recall the exact date, but Ingrid, you did some work on this. So can you speak to leasing space potentially from another town?
Yep, that was another option that the building committee looked at. In order to help us study the viability of that, we are members of the BICO Collaborative, which is a regional special education collaborative. There are 18 members, so 18 of our neighboring districts are also part of BICO. The enrollment in BICO has grown, and in the past year, actually just opening in September, BICO leased 60,000 square feet of space from the Walpole Public Schools to move and relocate programs. So we looked at what BICO ended up negotiating for that lease. There are a couple of different factors. There were quite a few build-out costs because most of the space available that would be that large is older buildings that are in need of upkeep, in order to meet codes and occupancy requirements. So BICO did have to spend about $650 upfront for renovations in order to make the building meet the required codes. Beyond that, on average, for each of the 10 years, the lease of space, and again, they did $60,000, was $850,000 annually. For each year of the contract, it varies a little, but that's the average. We would only be needing 40,000 square feet approximately, so the lease, you could just estimate from that being between 600 and 650 on annual, as an annual cost. However, the other factors that we discussed and considered with that, if we were to consider leasing a third site or a building that is out of town, there are significant additional staffing costs that come into play. So you would need to hire another administrator who would be on site to oversee the building, a full-time school nurse. You would need to additionally hire 2 maintenance staff. You're required to have a custodian in the school during the day, as well as somebody to clean at night, because we can't clean when the kids are here. Food service, so we would have to have the ability to serve school meals during the course of the day, which is a full food service team. Additional cost for transportation back and forth. Viability too, the district could not move any of the grades from K to 6, because then again you would need a physical education program, you would need a school library, you would need art and music teachers on site. The only potential that we could consider would be moving the preschool. Again, we have 6 preschool classrooms. There would be significant additional staffing costs. And then on top of that, because we provide preschool as of a child's 3rd birthday, if they have disabilities, almost over 50% of our students are receiving speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, or other related services. Our current staff would not have time in the schedules to include travel to a third site and back. So we would have to increase those positions in order to accommodate that because their schedules are full currently. When you look at all the additional staffing costs, you're looking at 1.5 to 1.8 million annually. Looking at that as a 10-year lease, you're looking at $15 to $18 million to lease space that at the end of 10 years, we still don't have a solution, a permanent solution to the growing enrollment. So the building committee, although they considered that, it seemed a very high price to not solve the situation and in 10 years be faced with the same challenge that we're facing currently. Additionally, it would require families who are residing in Norfolk, paying taxes to live in the town, to have their students educated in an older facility outside of the town. The security questions, concerns, all align with that. So that option was ruled out by the committee for both fiscal reasons as well as practical implications.
We are almost there, I promise. So similar question, but in town. Did the building committee look at the possibility of creating an early childhood preschool program in another location in town that's existing? Ingrid, since similar, I'll let you answer.
We also looked at that and we discussed that. The town administrator was part of our building committee. There are very few properties owned by the town that could accommodate that size of a facility. The engineers and architects we work with throughout this process also indicated that bringing a current facility to existing code for schools is often, a renovation is often more costly than a new build. Additionally, a third site would potentially resolve the space problem we have at H. Olive Day, but it wouldn't address the projected increase in enrollment and the lack of space at Freeman Kennedy. So we would also have to look at a temporary modular or alternate solution at the Freeman Kennedy School. Cost of 2 building projects exceeds what we project in the single solution we're proposing. Again, a third preschool site would have all of the additional challenges in terms of staffing that we discussed. You would need a kitchen, you would need food service, you would need an administrator, you'd need a nurse. Some of those are difficult to fill, but they're also costly positions. So that was also ruled out.
And finally, as far as the questions that we've received thus far, if the expansion project does not pass, how will the district address enrollment growth? Sorry, I'm getting tired.
Well, I mean, I think, sure. If this project does not pass, the district will need to continue to seek ways to manage enrollment growth while pursuing, other possible expansion options. I think that anyone who is part of the building committee, but I know specifically, I can only really speak for myself, knows that we have looked at all of those options and they don't provide a cost savings. I mean, that's essentially the issue. In the short term, class sizes would increase. Special subject instruction would continue to need to be delivered on a cart or, not in an instructional classroom, as those spaces continue to be repurposed and utilized for classroom instruction at the H. Olive Day School. Similarly, the auditorium at the H. Olive Day School is being utilized as essentially office space for teachers at this point, so there are not
they're all on the stage.
They're all on the stage, so, for any parent of an older child, such as myself, who recalls the day when you would do sort of the big, expansive kindergarten memory show or the Wizard of Oz production that the kids used to put on, those don't happen either. Obviously, those are nice to have, not necessary, but just kind of painting the picture. So in addition to that, at Freeman Kennedy, you would continue to see the space crunch continue to get worse as the enrollment growth moves from H. Olive Day up into the upper grades at Freeman Kennedy. The makerspace and music classrooms would likely need to be repurposed as instructional classroom space to at least initially try to accommodate that growth. And the science lab, which has already been converted into an instructional classroom, would continue to be used as a classroom and not as a science lab. So that would be probably in the relatively short term, the first few years. Subsequent to that, the district would need to come back to the town and again have a discussion about how to solve the problem. Whether that was modular units that have already been sort of reviewed and assessed, or a second ask for a permanent build addition. Ultimately, with an influx of 204 students into the school district, there is no longer any way to, at a certain point, there is no way to creatively manage or creatively utilize any of the existing space. You simply have no space. And at that point, at whatever point that might come, you would be looking at additional escalations in costs associated with the project, and whatever iteration of the school committee or school building committee might exist at that point would again come before the town and be requesting additional funding. It is not, I think, an issue that is going to resolve without a solution.
So thank you for bearing with us. That is what we have received to date through, again, reaching out to us personally or the building website, but all questions, please continue to ask. Would love to see everybody at the forums, and please educate yourself and vote.
There is one other question that we are working on. There was a question about the operating costs of the new addition. Our facilities director has been working with the town to develop that estimate, because not all of the facilities operational costs are carried in the school budget. But the rough estimate looks like it's about $150,000 to $160,000 for annual operational costs. That would include cleaning products, heat, utilities, all of the general maintenance. And that number, once it's solidified, will be added to the document.
Okay, great. And again, this will be posted on the website, and any more questions we'll continue to add to it. So please continue to engage. And thanks for bearing with us.
Thank you. All right, moving on to King Philip, I will just do a quick update because I know we are running long, but some of these actually are directly relevant to us. So our 3 towns have an LPAC, which is an English Language Parent Advisory Council, and their next meeting will be January 22nd at the Roderick School in Rentham. It's the second meeting for the group, and the focus of their meeting will be forming friendships and belonging. They're also going to be doing learning walks at KP Middle School, which I thought was great, that our 6th grade math and science teachers from this school, Plainville and Rentham, will be participating in learning walks in vertical conversations with KP Middle School math and science teachers that will assist in aligning curriculum and developing deeper connections between the elementary and middle school staff. KP is also figuring out, now that the MCAS is not a requirement for graduation, they're figuring out what is their competency determination, so still working on that. So that is the main update from KP. And then we have any liaison updates, CPAC?
Yes, CPAC, I'll give a brief update because I think everybody's sick of hearing from me. But I will say the next CPAC meeting is tomorrow, right here, 7 p.m. in the library. So please, if you have any questions or want to educate yourself, everyone is welcome. Just a couple highlights. The eye care readings are underway and should be wrapping up mid-February, so always a highlight. There is a free IEP workshop on the 22nd. That's held with the Federation for Children with Special Needs. That's going to be virtual. I don't know, I didn't write down the website, so if you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or CPAC or attend tomorrow and ask a question. And the CPAC will also have a booth at the Regional Community Resource Fair at KP Middle School on February 26th. So super high level, but again, more information tomorrow night, so please.
Thanks. Update from the PTO. They just approved that $15,000 grant to fund the youth engineering curriculum enhancements, which is so amazing, and we're so appreciative. On January 24th is Heritage Night, and they invite all to participate and attend. Last year there were over 300 people there, really showcasing their backgrounds and cultures and different traditions that they have, and everyone had a great night. They are selling Red Sox tickets, and the 3rd and 4th grade movie night is at the end of the month. And then ZD with My Sweetie, which is for 2nd graders, is in February. It's the news from the PTO. Any other liaison updates?
Yeah, just an update from the Norfolk Community League. They have a couple really fun fundraising events coming up. The next one is My Valentine and Me, which is a date night for sons and caregivers. It's a bowling party on Sunday, February 2nd. Tickets typically do sell out, but I just checked and there are some, at least you can register online to do that if you'd like. And then they also have, it's a Shamrock Shuffle dance, which is really fun. It's parents and kids. That's in March. I need to double check the date. I had that up, I think. Yeah, there it is. Sorry, March 7th. And you can register for all of these through the Norfolk Community League website.
Any others?
No.
Great. We'll pass it on to you.
All right, we're going to start first with the budget update. Miriam Goodman, our business director, is here to share where we are tracking so far as of the end of the 2024 school year, or 2024 fiscal calendar year.
Great, thank you. So, as you can see, this is what your current budget looks like. Your FY 2025 approved budget was 15,500. Sorry, this is what your original approved budget looks like. Was 15,565,080 in the categories that you see. This is a revised budget. As you are aware, at Norfolk Town Meeting, you were given an additional allocation of $169,089 for the ELA curriculum, as well as a portion of an additional grade 1 teacher for additional Chapter 70 that was received after the budget process was finalized. So your total budget at this point is $15,734,169. I'm going to talk to you about it in different categories of expenses by the DESI categories. In the 1000 series, you can see on the left-hand side the items and offices that are included in the category. And on the right-hand side, you can see where the balance is at this point in time, where I'm anticipating it will fall at the end of June, and any comments. In this case, we're looking at a negative balance of $19,804 with an offset or reclass from our revolving account for administrative services that our offices provide for our SAC programs, such as payroll and staffing, human resource, and purchasing. So we're looking at an adjusted balance of $196 to end the year in that category. In our instructional category, which is our 2000 series, our largest area of spending, you can see that is currently in the negative, adjusted to the tune of negative $105,823. We did get additional money for the ELA curriculum, as I mentioned at the town meeting. We will be reclassing expenses to, these are one-time expenses from a non-resident tuition revolving account, one-time expenses that will be reclassed this year, so that money is not available for use in future years. We have a new grade 1, again, the amounts are included in there, and 2 new EL paras to support our newly enrolled students. At this point, we anticipate that deficit being used, offset by the money that we will be getting from the Bay State Shelter. We've received a grant that ahead of time at this point we have, but we will be getting $104 a day for each student enrolled per day. So we are anticipating that at this point that will be about $120,000 that we would receive as of before the end of the school year for students that are enrolled in and still living in the shelter through the end of March. So if all of the students that are there today are still there at the end of March, we anticipate the $120,000 would come to the district to offset that at this point. In other student services, you can see a deficit of $121,461. This is a transportation account primarily. We have additional students in our special education services outplaced that we are transporting that we didn't anticipate. We also have an additional bus that we're paying for. And it would appear that our operations and maintenance could fund a good chunk of that deficit. We are projecting a balance of just under $130,000 in operations and maintenance. We will be reclassing custodial expenses to our SAC program as well as our school lunch revolving accounts. So that's why you see that balance there. Fixed charges is a small balance of $3,190 for insurance and contractual benefits. And then we get to our programs with other districts in our 9,000 series. So we're looking at a negative balance of $158,836, which also includes the one-time reclassification from our special education stabilization account, which the school committee and the select board approved the use of $125,000. We're also receiving a reimbursement of $89,000 we already have that will apply towards this account for circuit breaker. We have a new 101 aid that was required for a student that we are required to pay for. After the budget was finalized, we found out about that. Our tuitions were higher than we anticipated slightly. And we have 2 additional students that we outplaced that I referred to when I talked about transportation. So at this point, we have an option to apply for what's called the Circuit Breaker Extraordinary Relief Program. And the Department of Ed offers this program to districts who meet an eligibility criteria of having a year of tuition that exceeds the prior year by 125%. So if our expenses in this category exceed 125% of last year's expenses, we would be eligible for that. And you can see what we spent in FY24 was $196,000. And what we're projecting in FY25 is $504,000, and it's well in excess of the 125%. So the department will put out a claim form in March and ask what districts might be eligible for this and might want to submit a claim. The funding is pooled from the department. They have a $5 million pool for funding for extraordinary relief claims, and it's based on the number of districts that actually apply for the extraordinary relief. So I don't have an estimate at this point. I can only tell you that if we were to get full funded, I would anticipate that amount to be about $157,000. We won't know that until March, when we know what districts have applied and how much money the state has to pay for all of those districts. Because once they identify that, that the percentage that each district would get would either be the max or it would be reduced based on giving a little bit to everybody. Does that make sense? So that's where we are in the 9,000 series. All told, your total bottom line, unfortunately, at this point, is a negative $252,858. Again, we anticipate that between the circuit breaker extraordinary relief money and the additional shelter money, based on the assumptions that I just talked about, we anticipate that that would bring us back to the black, to a break even, hopefully more than a break even, but that's where I am as of right now. So talking about revolving funds are specialized for that purpose, for their fee-based programs. So we take in fees for these purposes that you see on the left, and the expenses can only be used for those purposes. We've already anticipated using $401,000 that I've built into the previous slides. Right now, as of the end of December, the balance in all of your revolving funds is $968,065. We will take in some additional revenue in some of those categories, and we generally attempt to keep 1 year of revenue in the bank to be able to apply to the next budget year. So any money that might come in this year for our school lunch would be used for expenses for the program to operate independently, but things like music revolving, which is a fee-based as well, would be used to offset the following year. We do receive grants. These are grants from the federal and state government. These are all federal grants, yes, the majority of them. To the tune of $354,000, that's your balance at this point in time. They're entitlement grants. You can see the two new grants for this year that we just recently applied for, one being the Kinvento, which is a federal program for homeless students, and the Emergency Homeless Shelter Support Grant, which is funding the expenses that we have that are associated with teachers servicing students.
So teachers, and also the renovation of the old cable studio, which we renovated over the December break, and our special education offices have moved and relocated to that area, which frees 3 offices at each Olive Day.
And then you can see the balances in each of those grants. We also, as I spoke about, we have circuit breaker funding. That this $89,000 will be used for FY26, and $125,000 of the sped stabilization fund is being used for this current year. So it hasn't actually been posted yet. The expenses haven't been posted yet, but those are the balances at this point, and we will be offsetting those costs, $214,000. And then our gift account, thank you to the Norfolk PTO, who had a generous gift that you approved tonight. That's wonderful. We have $39,277 as of the end of December for additional enhancements to instructional programs and other things like that. Happy to answer any questions you all might have.
I have a question, but it may be just Miriam, because I think you're still relatively new to the district. It may be for Ingrid. Have we ever been in a situation to apply for the extraordinary relief circuit breaker claim?
We have not. The majority of our students, we've worked really hard to build in-district programs, and most of our students receive services in-district, and our costs have been pretty consistent. This is an unusual situation and would be the first time that we're applying for those funds.
Yeah, and in 17 years that I've been doing this job in the state of Massachusetts, I've only applied for it once.
Okay.
And it was 17 years ago.
How did it go?
Actually, I got $430,000.
I was looking for that.
That was for Franklin, so.
All right.
So, okay, thank you.
Oh, I guess, yeah. Anyone?
Thank you.
All right, the next subject under my report is a discussion of the health curriculum and the process that we will go through for the review of the health curriculum materials and frameworks. So, as I think everybody is well aware, the state of Massachusetts updated their comprehensive health and physical education frameworks through a pretty extensive process last year. The proposed frameworks were put out for public comment and then were voted on by the Board of Education over the summer. This year, our district is in the process of implementing a brand new ELA curriculum program, which is very demanding, and it's a lot for all of our teachers that are putting in a lot of time to make sure that they are delivering the instruction consistent with the new program, and there's a lot of professional development. Our focus has really been on supporting that successful implementation, providing PD for our teachers, and making sure that we are successful with this new adoption. As a result, we are not, as a district, implementing the new frameworks until next year. We also are part of a regional system. So our students that are with us through K-6 obviously go to King Philip for grades 7 through 12. The frameworks are written in grade level bands. So standards are assigned to pre-K to 2, grades 3 to 5, and then grades 6 to 8. Because of that, and because we want to make sure that all of our students have a vertically aligned, I don't know why, sorry, I apologize, vertically aligned curriculum, we are meeting and working collaboratively with Rentham and Plainville. We are going to start by looking at the standards that are grades 6 to 8. We actually have the first meeting scheduled on Friday. We will be meeting with the middle school health educators and staff, as well as our physical education staff, our director of health and wellness regionally, and our adjustment counselors. The first step of the process is going to be to take a look at all of the standards in the new frameworks. We're going to be going through to identify what are we currently teaching, what are areas and what grades are we teaching the current standard, or the standards that are overlapping from the two documents, identifying what is new, and then beginning discussions of where the new standards should land. So again, they're written as bands 5 to 8. We need to determine, are they landing in grade 5, are they landing in grade 6, or what is that scope and sequence going to look like? It is important that we work collaboratively with Rentham and Plainville because all of our students will enter in 7th grade, and we want to make sure that their education that they receive at the elementary level is parallel for counterparts, so that when they come together, the 7th and 8th grade curriculum is aligned and makes sense. So we're beginning by looking at the grades 6 to 8 standards. Then we will work on grade 3 to 5 with our regional partners as well, and then looking at the pre-K to 2. Once we go through the process of mapping the standards, we'll be going back to look at what materials do we have. The new health standards do have a significant emphasis on healthy choices, safe choices. There's significantly more content around nutrition, making safe choices. So we're going to look at what are we currently using to address these standards, and where do we have gaps, and where might we need additional new resources and materials. Once we've identified that, we will be reviewing what's recommended by the state of Massachusetts and trying to identify high quality materials to address the new standards that we aren't currently teaching. Once we complete that process, which I expect will be around probably May, we will be bringing recommendations to the school committee for the proposed scope and sequence, as well as all the new curriculum materials. The school committee will have a chance to review those materials. I will probably provide an update of our progress in March, and then the school committee would review and vote on those new materials. I think it's important we recognize that there are components in the new health frameworks and standards that people have questions about, very different viewpoints on. I think it is very important, and we are committed to making sure that there is lots of opportunity for parents to engage, to come to receive updates, to look at the materials, and make informed decisions for their children. The presentation to the school committee, as I said, will have the new resources available. Once the school committee votes and we have an adopted curriculum, we will have a curriculum night for parents to come in, ask any questions that they might have. I do think there are some questions out there and some misinformation. We are always available to meet with anybody who has questions about what's currently being taught, or what we're looking at, or what the process looks like. We are most likely will do an update for parents, maybe a coffee sometime in March to update on progress. Many people probably noticed we've rolled into a new district website and a new web format. Adrian worked really hard with our district technology staff to design that and to bring the content over. But we will be building out the curriculum page. We anticipate that all the materials for most of our curriculum programs will be accessible through that website and through that page, so that parents can review the content at any point. Happy to take any questions that people might have.
Yeah, Ingrid, thank you for the update.
Sure.
Ahead of the meeting, I connected with you and with Lisa because I wanted to share some reflections about the framework and the December meeting as well. So I have to put my thoughts down because I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to read through it. Just bear with me. Let me say my piece, and we can move forward from there. But I want to say up front that each and every child in our district is precious. They're valued and worthy of respect, regardless of their family background and any other factors of identity or beliefs. So the thoughts I'm sharing here are really geared entirely towards the need, as we've acknowledged, for improved transparency with our parents, as well as mutual respect for the very different beliefs that are within our community. Since we last met, I gave a great deal of thought to both the DESE health framework as well as concerns raised at the December meeting from parents about parental notification. I've read through the emails that parents sent to the committee and have met with other parents outside of that to discuss their individual viewpoints and beliefs around gender identity and sex ed related lessons at the elementary school age levels. So before talking about the comprehensive framework, I just want to comment about the issue that arose in November because it's related to the framework. Several parents became aware that there were certain lessons imminently planned that included a very brief explanation of gender identity as a spectrum. A child can identify as a boy, a girl, neither, or both. That's exactly what was planned for the lesson. As parents found that out, they began to message the committee expressing a sense of betrayal at not being notified in advance and requesting that their children be taken out of those particular lessons that were planned. The district did remove the mention of gender identity from the lessons for the time being, noting that these topics may be reintroduced in the future as we look at those components of the comprehensive health framework. So it seemed to be a surprise that a lesson like that would be considered controversial given it's very short. But in reality, it is controversial because not all in the community believe that gender fluidity should be taught to elementary age students. Some feel strongly it's best discussed in the privacy and safety of the home before any classroom-wide discussion takes place. The beliefs that these families hold, whether religious, philosophical, or even biological, should be respected along with everyone else's in our community. We recently renamed the annual Halloween parade in response to differing religious beliefs. It stands to reason that we would afford the same level of consideration for this, which is truly a deeply personal, subjective, and sensitive topic for many families. So I think there's been a loss of trust with some parents that we as a committee need to repair in a thoughtful manner. So I do think going forward, the schools should make parents aware of such content, regardless of whether we spend 5 minutes or 5 hours on the topic. We should structure lessons and content in a way that we can allow parents to review the material, that they know the material's there, and if they decide to, they can opt out of those particular lessons without any penalty or adverse, implications to the students themselves. So that's kind of related to the upcoming DESE framework and the plans that you're making for that update to the general health, the comprehensive health framework. I've spent hours leading up to this meeting trying to understand the overall framework, the Department of Education materials, Mass General Law, and as well as some proposed legislative bills such as the Healthy Youth Act that's related to the framework. Based on what I've read, currently my understanding is that this comprehensive health and physical education framework is an updated set of standards from DESE for K through 12 that districts can use as a guide for planning curriculum. It encompasses a very broad set of categories, which you alluded to, Ingrid. We're talking about physical health, fitness, nutrition, hygiene, safety, relationships, sex ed, sexual health, gender identity, among even more topics. So I tried to find, kind of what the framework mandates or doesn't mandate. And I cannot find language that states that the framework as a whole is mandatory or legally binding, such that all schools have to adopt it in full without question. There's also no deadline by which schools must implement the framework. And logically, I don't see how this framework could be mandated because it includes both state-required topics such as phys ed and health, as well as elective or voluntary topics such as sex ed, sexual health, and gender identity. There are bills that have been introduced into legislation that would make the framework law in total by mandating sex ed, which currently isn't a mandatory topic. But those to date have not yet passed. So at most, when we're talking about this framework, I think it's the most accurate description of it would be that it's partially mandatory. So all the language that I see reads that it's voluntary, noting that districts that adopt the framework have discretion over how to implement the standards, including the design of the curriculum, instructional strategies, activities, lesson plans, materials, and defining the associated parental notification and opt-out policies. I also understand school committee's role is to partner with you and the district in the decision about the adoption of the framework and the associated curriculum plan that the district proposes. And in terms of parental notification and opt-out, I understand DESE recommends that we limit it only to sex ed related lessons. However, they also do concede that districts have full discretion to include topics that are sensitive in their community, such as gender identity, and as part of the overall opt-out policy. I'm happy to share my thoughts and the references that I use to come to those conclusions. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I came to that conclusion by logically looking at all of the information that's out there. I'd been under the impression that school committee has little or no input into steering direction of this, but with what I understand now, I really do think we're putting the cart before the horse by having in-depth discussions of curriculum plans with other districts, because I think we need to slow down and have an open discussion as a committee with you about what aspects of this framework, to really have a common understanding of what aspects of this framework are obligatory versus voluntary, and also set the direction overall for what we feel is right for the district. And the school committee has input into that, as I understand. So there's a few areas I'd like us to contemplate as we do that. So are some of the topics recommended for K through 6 simply too aggressive or mature for some of the young students in our system? Which ones, why or why not? How are we contemplating logical boundaries to help teachers ensure they aren't becoming arbiters of a child's gender or sexual orientation, and that they're not inadvertently introducing conflict with their parents? I'd like us to look at resources and to see that we have an ideologically balanced set of resources supporting the topics in the framework. Do any of the ones DESE recommends cross the line from objective education into social activism or very deep sexual content. As we don't currently have a sex ed curriculum in this district, I did note that also Chapter 71 says that we should be taking public input into the development of that curriculum. So I'd ask also, what is our plan with respect to that? What are the consequences of not adopting the framework? Noting again that there's no deadline set by the state of Massachusetts for adoption. And if we did adopt this framework, we have to ensure it's structured in a way that it's transparent, clear, and enables opt-out for a range of topics. Lastly, I think that given our extreme budget constraints, our concerns about academic performance, the MCAS scores that we just saw, the continued increase in class sizes, academic support needs, the Norfolk shelter support that we need to give to newcomers, it gives me pause about how much time, effort, and money the district should be putting towards this versus our core academic needs. So I recommend we take some steps as a committee, and I'm requesting some steps be taken. 2 of them are already acknowledged, and I really appreciate that, and I think that it speaks volumes for the committee and for you, Ingrid and Vicki. First, you've already said that you've paused these lessons until we have these deeper discussions and have a framework in place for notification and opt-out. And the second thing that we're already doing is reviewing our existing policy to ensure that we have clear guidelines around this and that it's inclusive for parents who have differing beliefs in this community, to enable them to understand the information and decide for their families whether they should be part of the lesson or not. And then the last 2 things I want to say is that before we spend more time and resources on this comprehensive curriculum, I just want a future agenda topic for us to clarify our common understanding of what's mandatory, what's voluntary, and discuss that broader question about the timing of adopting the framework in full or in part. And I think I want to say strongly that we should be really focused right now, our energies and resources, on the core academic needs that we're constantly seeing and talking about, especially in ELA and math. I think it's the most important thing we can be doing for our children right now. And at the December meeting, we discussed the need to revisit academic goals based on that flat and declining report we saw from the MCAS report. So I'm asking for another agenda item as well to discuss the district's current goal setting for academics and assess where we can refine those goals and potentially refine how we're measuring those goals. So thank you so much for letting me just say my piece. Appreciate it, and give you back the mic.
Sure. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I think, as you mentioned, a couple of the things that you are asking for are things that are already in process. So we are not and have not planned to implement the new standards this year until we go through that review process. And the policy subcommittee is looking at potential opt-out to recognize the different viewpoints people have. As far as the academic growth, that has been our exclusive and primary focus throughout the school year, and we are going to be providing a benchmark and baseline report update on some of the academic goals and what you can expect to see and what we're targeting for this year at the next coming meeting. As far as the work with the other districts, the school committee certainly will have opportunities for input. Whenever we do a curriculum review, we always send out parent surveys and also gather community input as part of the process. We are currently operating with very dated health frameworks, so in all areas, nutrition, physical education standards, and we do need to move those forward because that is part of a total comprehensive education. So the intent of working with the other 2 districts is to kind of look at the frameworks, the new frameworks, the crosswalk, what's new, what are we currently teaching, where do we have significant gaps, and share that with the committee. So as I said, we'll be coming back with an update in March, open to any other conversations you want to have as part of that process. But I think it's important that we have data to bring you to support those conversations in terms of what we have currently, where we see the biggest gaps, what the needs are, and what the next steps we might be able to take. So I don't know if other people have thoughts.
Yeah, I just have a question kind of built off of that. When we talk about the curriculum for the health would that be something that is mainly spearheaded teaching by like our physical education educators?
It's multiple people.
Okay,
There'll be
because
multiple people, administrators, the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction from King Philip, as well as Plainville, our regional mental health director, our regional
not building it,
health
I'm saying
wellness.
like actually implementing it once it comes in.
I think it's a really good question, Lauren. I think that's part of what we have to look at as well, because every district has different models. We do not have designated health teachers. Some of the standards are currently covered through our physical education program. Others are covered. We do not teach sex education in Norfolk at this time. The only unit that we have, and it does have a parent notice, is around changing bodies. It's usually taught in 5th grade. During COVID, when kids weren't present, we did it in 6th grade because we didn't think that was a great virtual unit. So that is taught in combination with our physical education teachers and school nurses. But the new frameworks do have different content, and I think we have to, again, look at what would be the recommended scope and sequence, and how are we going to deliver that instruction? Who's going to provide those lessons? So that, again, we would need to come with recommendations for discussion with the school committee.
Okay.
Some of the elementary schools do have a designated health class. We do not.
Part of the discussion with like why is kind of waiting till next year is that we have the ELA rollout and it's a lot, but I think next year we're going to be looking at a new math curriculum.
Correct.
So it's just
Yep.
kind of like a domino effect, and that's why
The
I was like, if
majority
it's
of these will not be taught in general ed classrooms. I mean, right now, the physical education and the health standards are primarily through our physical education program. But we do have to look at that, and we always, when we're looking at new curriculum, have to balance what the demands are currently on teachers, and we work with our teachers collaboratively as well to look at that.
Well, that's like my sensitivity to, what they're going to be proposed to be, not just teaching, but also the professional development and learning how to teach this in the conversations that might come up. So I'm interested. Do we have, I don't know if you can, maybe Vicky's a better one to jump this off of like what curriculums we're looking at and comparing, so like we as a committee could get a head start and kind of.
Yeah, we haven't even had, we haven't even had that discussion. Right now, we're using the Spark program primarily for our nutrition and phys ed standard, but that's also part of the collaborative discussion. What's out there, what have people seen success with that we'll engage in that conversation. Yeah. And again, the intent is to bring the committee an update, so as soon as we have some suggestions or potential programs, we can certainly share that with you so that everybody can review and look at them.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of the updates are going to be really good, and I am incredibly sensitive to the fact that there are some controversial topics that could potentially come up. I'm encouraged by, Peter, and I'd love to get kind of more information from like a DESE point of view on, again, like written correspondence of what is required, what is not, what, because if the responsibility falls on the school committee with the advice and guidance of the admin to kind of tailor a specific curriculum for the needs of the district, then I'm definitely interested in picking and choosing, or, I can only speak for myself, but kind of seeing what we as a district want to implement. Kind of pulling back to the policy committee with the opt-out. I haven't fully looked at what we currently have, but I know with this change there are certain districts who have implemented opt-ins, and I do want to encourage our policy committee to look into that option. I'm guessing it's something that has to be run by legal counsel, but considering other districts have already legally implemented it, I would think that there are many avenues to take in that concern. And I think that would be a good approach also in regards to kind of protecting the district, because with an opt-out, obviously, like communication at home could get missed. With an opt-in, you kind of, like if you don't return your permission slip, then you don't take part in it, kind of thing. So it kind of, no parent could kind of turn around and say, well, I didn't receive this, so that I feel like that might help to kind of protect the district a little bit, but that's my 2 cents. I'm hoping and hopeful that a policy like that can be looked into.
I do also think, as you said, we are looking at the new health frameworks, and we are designing, and we'll bring forward recommendations for a program that is intended to meet the needs of all students, and there are different viewpoints. So I think that the community feedback, the parent surveys that we do will be really helpful in giving the committee information from broad perspectives of what parents are feeling about these topics and what information they're seeking. So that will be part of it too.
I had one thing to say, but I think, Grace, you were speaking earlier and didn't get to finish what you were saying.
Well, now my question seems a little silly, so I can probably take it offline. But I'm interested in knowing the makeup of the other organizations, and Lauren, you kind of touched on this, but the other districts, because we don't have a health instructor,
Right.
What does Rentham have? What does Plainville have? How does that go up into the middle school? So I'll take that offline with you and we can check.
And we'll bring that to the update. Right now, Rentham does have a health
right. I knew that's
dedicated health teacher. Plainville does not. And I think that's also what makes some of the curriculum decisions that we're making more complicated, because all of our students go to 7th grade together, and they have a health class. So we do have to have some conversations about how kids are coming into that. And we all have different models. So it is a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, and I think with a topic like this that is so emotional and sensitive, right, I want to make sure that our students are coming into the middle school with as close as they can to everybody else, because I do think, I have gone from Rentham to KP Middle School, and it's an experience, right? So I do think it's important to try to get as close to baseline as we can.
Yeah.
But obviously working with everybody to make sure.
And we do that with other curriculum programs to make sure that there's alignment. So I think
But we
that's
do
important.
also use different curriculums too.
We
so
do,
then
but we
others
have a
don't.
same common set of standards.
Of course.
So that's a little bit different than within this content area.
Yeah, just to, I think this, some of my own thoughts, but reiterating a lot of this, I appreciate the fact, and, again, because I'm long in the tooth for a school committee member at this point, I've been through a few different curriculum adoptions over the years, and understanding that that this ultimately, any change to the curriculum would be a substantial change to the curriculum. It would be adopting new materials that would not move forward. We appreciate the collaboration. I appreciate the collaboration, and I appreciate being informed about changes to a curriculum that hasn't been updated since like the early 2000s, something like that. So 20-year-old nutritional recommendations being updated, I can definitely get behind that. But also understanding that, it's done collaboratively, and ultimately the school committee does vote. I mean, it is not, these are recommendations that are made. We work collaboratively with the district to understand why those recommendations are being made and what the materials involved might look like, and what educator feedback looks like and administrative feedback looks like, but ultimately, yes, this is a decision that is made by the committee. And then in addition to that, certainly, as we mentioned in our policy update earlier, interested in seeing what we can do to creatively address concerns that have been raised around some of the subject matters that are being discussed, but also want to note, again, as a parent of older kids, one of whom has long since left the district and one who is preparing to leave the district, having worked through the changing bodies conversation twice now, and the opt-out that is offered as part of that, I would like to say that whatever choice any parent makes around that, it has been communicated very well. It has been a very respectful process. The entire process is handled extraordinarily efficiently from an opt-out perspective, and it is heavily tracked and monitored to make sure that curriculum is not delivered to a student that should be opted out, and that students who, it is a form that it is a form
We
that you
send the
fill-
letter
it-
right
it is a-
before we, like 2 weeks before we teach, and we make the, all the materials available.
Right,
So it's
and
not something you have to
I
know is coming up 3 months from now.
And regardless of the choice you are making with respect to your student, there is an action, as I understand it, that is involved in saying yes or no already in the process that is being observed by the district. So I just want to make that clear. It is not it's not the Wild West of opting out and exemptions. It's a heavily tracked and very respectful process. So just putting that out there, happy to, as part of the policy subcommittee, continue to try and address the various concerns that we've received from any number of folks over the past few months as this topic has come to the forefront. So that is.
And I do think I just want to circle back to the beginning comments that Peter shared. I think we all share the common goal of wanting to make sure that all of our students, every child who walks through the door, feels safe, welcome, and respected at school. So I think there are a lot of different opinions on this topic, but we do share a common goal. And I think with open dialogue, transparency, and conversation, we can find a way to implement the new health frameworks that meet the needs of all of our students, and that is efficient and effective for our children.
I think I just want to echo that because I've talked to people who are fully supportive of implementing the new framework and people who have serious concerns about it. But the common thread that everyone agrees on is the transparency piece and how important that is. And no parent should be surprised by what their child is learning in school. And every student should feel welcome and safe in school. I think that's what I've heard across the board in my conversations with people with all different views on this. The standards themselves, I think the big concern for a lot of parents is it seems to blur the line sometimes on what conversation should be had at home and what should be had at school, and people are going to have different opinions on that. What is appropriate at certain ages for some kids might not, like they're for second grader, K through 2, they want to discuss stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, equality and inequality, and gender role stereotypes. They want to talk to 3rd through 5th graders about cocaine. Lots of different things in here where if you read them, I think a lot of people can't picture how is this even going to be taught. So I think having those lessons up front, this is what we're teaching, this is the lesson plan, this is the video we're going to use. Some parents might say this doesn't work for my family, and it's not coming from a place of hate or not coming from, it's some people say, I see what you're doing there, I want to have that conversation with my child at home. So I think just going through this process and just being really committed to, some parents feel very strongly about the values they want to instill in their children and how they want to teach their children certain things. And then others may look at a lesson plan and say, I was really nervous about that, but I see how you're going to teach it now and I'm okay with it. And in the same token, we look at it and just say, I'm going to opt my child out, and it sounds like people are committed to addressing a wide range of viewpoints and respecting all of them. And I did like what you say, because I noticed in the notes we would vote and then have a community forum. But it sounds like
we'll
you're
probably
still
do
getting
an informational coffee and a parent discussion. There's lots of ways that we gather feedback from the public. What I was referring to there is that whenever we have a new curriculum, we often, once it's adopted, we'll have a curriculum night. So until we know what we're teaching or what the curriculum's been adopted, we wouldn't do that because we don't know what materials, and we wouldn't have the materials available for people to view. But having a parent coffee and gathering community input is part of the process throughout.
Yeah, because I've said for the past 3 years that I just think parents are the experts on their kids, and they have the right and the privilege to have certain conversations with them as they see fit, and we never want to surprise parents about topics their kids are being introduced to. But it sounds like, referring to what Peter said, just getting that legal clarification down so we're all at the same starting point with the same understanding. Because I look too, and then in some press releases say voluntary, and then others say mandatory, and I'm like, these are only 2 months apart. Which one is it?
I did call the Department of Ed, and the response that I got was that districts have the ability to choose how and the materials, not the if, but I will continue to pursue definitive information.
Sex ed is not.
Sex ed is an exception. Sex ed,
Correct.
Local districts have the right to select.
There you go. I mean, all of the language that's been discussed thus far has been an assumption that the framework in its entirety is going to be implemented at Norfolk. I understand you don't want to stop the train with the districts, and you want to continue that work with the districts. I can't stop you from that, but I am asking that we have the conversation we should have had before you started that process, which is we as a committee and you as a superintendent, what's our common understanding of this framework from a required versus voluntary standpoint? And what do we think is the right direction and vision for this district? I feel like we need to have that conversation to feel that we're all, on the same page. And frankly, we may not all be on the same page even after that conversation.
No, we can certainly do that.
But I think that should have been the first step before going headlong into we're implementing this because it's mandatory and we're talking to all the districts. And so I would like the opportunity for us to have that conversation. If you want to do that in parallel to the districts.
We can certainly do that. And again, that's a different process than we've followed in the past. Generally, the educators review the content and bring forward recommendations for discussion. Certainly happy to look at that, your recommendations and the conversations. But the work that we're doing with the other districts is not jumping into implementation. We haven't even unpacked the frameworks to think about where would it logically make sense. So we don't have anything to really discuss yet. We're just looking at the document together and having some preliminary conversations about what does this look like? What are we doing now? What's different? What could that look like? So I don't see that as being too far ahead of the committee. We can certainly have I think those things can happen parallel.
Yeah. I think I've watched other school committees that have that have gone through this process, and
very open to it.
One of the things that I'm recognizing and why I'm asking so strongly that we have some more upfront conversations is these school committees are getting the entire implementation plan 48 hours in advance, and they're being asked to vote the thing in. And it's difficult for a school committee to really have critical thinking, to review the materials, including the actual materials, because some, the videos, for example, some of them are pretty intense. We need to have that open conversation. And so these committees are put in a position of approving or not approving with nary 48 hours to review what the district has put together. And they're being told that everything is mandatory. And that's not correct.
We can certainly make sure you have more time. We always try, if we have a significant report, to get it to you way in advance so that you have time to unpack it. So I appreciate it. I wouldn't want to vote on something with, substantial without time to properly review. So
I do think, as well, and again, this may be colored by my personal subjective experience, right? I suppose in reviewing the frameworks, in reviewing the legal standards and having experienced this before, this committee in all curriculum has a certain degree of discretion in applying any curricular standard. And that, I guess a different perspective on the process is that I'm looking for information on what the curriculum might look like in implementation so that I can sort of see it and understand, how that would change or perhaps not really fundamentally change what it is that's happening now as it's going to be proposed, so that we can understand as a committee through some feedback from Rentham and Plainville as well, what this might actually look like internally. I personally haven't felt like I was being told to do anything, and so I want to kind of put that out there. It is a process that I think everyone on this committee and the community as well will benefit from, to see what in actuality updated curriculums look like, what is being presented, what is available for adoption, and
it helps
what
us
it would
to
change.
know what is already being taught in 7th and 8th grade. Like, we don't need to recreate the wheel. So if we know these standards are already there, they may not be elementary standards. So it's, in the past, the committee has requested that we come with recommendations from the educational team for you to consider, but we can certainly as I said, do these two things parallel.
Sure. Just jumping off of what Medora said, sorry if I didn't.
I just wanted to say, personally for me, in my experience on the committee, I have placed a high degree of value on the feedback from the educational team. I am not an educator. I do not have any degree in education, let alone a doctorate or the experience of the teaching staff and administrators who typically comprise the curriculum review teams that have been set up historically to look at any new curriculum adoption. And so I value that feedback. It is not the only information that I consider when we are discussing the adoption of a new curriculum in any capacity. But I think that it is, certainly I have never had the impression with respect to an issue of curriculum that this committee is not paying attention to what they are doing, either this committee or any iteration of the committee I have sat on up until this point. But I think that it is very helpful to have the perspective of the educators who are going to be delivering the curriculum incorporated into that thought process. And, I think it's important to understand the logistics, the various parties that are involved in this conversation, whether that is the district, other partner districts that we may have, other districts in the Commonwealth, the Department of Ed, and take all of that into account, but ultimately understanding that, yes, it is the discretion of the school committee to vote or not vote for any substantial change to a curriculum.
Sorry, I was just jumping off of that because you mentioned would it be possible when we're discussing these things maybe at the next meeting, and maybe I should ask Vicki, to see what our current health curriculum is? Because you can see the new frameworks and I can read through them, but I can't compare them to what, I could, but it'd take me a whole lot of time. So
that's what we're trying to work on and to bring you from this regional meeting is the comparison of the crosswalk, what's new, what's different.
Okay, I would love to see that.
And we can certainly get you what we're using currently.
Okay, and I am definitely interested in seeing what they kind of come and recommend in regards to where certain topics fall in terms of age, because I feel like the frameworks themselves have
they're wide band.
They are 3 through 5th, 6 through 8th, there's a lot of development, and so and I didn't even know about the cocaine part, but a third grader, again, I'm just interested to see where certain topics and probably have a lot more kind of feedback or opinions once
we have a draft.
Can I just make a request? And it might be silly to say, but I just, as we go into this in a health framework, yes, I know we're, this was mostly focused around the identity and sex ed, but I also think we're a diverse committee for a reason. And we all come to this meeting and come to our daily lives with different lived experiences. And so we may say, cocaine and laugh under our, but some of us have been, a lot of the communities have been impacted by these things. And so I just hope that, we're trying to do the best for our kids as a whole. And that's really hard because we all come with different, lived experience. I know that was
not meant to be disrespectful.
But I just wanted to point out, just because, you never know how something's going to hit someone, and this stuff's sensitive, even the health framework with the food and all of that. And so I just want to make sure that we're all, and I know we all are, but I'm saying it just maybe.
I think if we just look,
and
again, I didn't mean
I
to
think
be
it might be helpful.
With the cocaine thing or anything. I was just if we're even mentioning that to first graders, that's
everything
very different
needs to be
than
age
sixth
appropriate,
grade.
and so I think that we're all in agreement. It's just we all come with different backgrounds.
Definitely.
We all feel like we need to educate our kids on certain things because of what our lived experience, right?
Yeah, so we all have different opinions, just as every community member in this community has different opinions and different backgrounds and everything. So I'm here to represent everybody, and I'm interested in kind of where things will fall, what's recommended, and then I think we can have a much bigger, broader discussion about those pieces once I can kind of visualize our
I do think anytime we're talking about something that is highly sensitive or people have strong feelings about, the more discussion, the better. And so I don't think anybody's opposed to that. And I would strongly encourage, if parents have thoughts or concerns or worries or strong beliefs, that they reach out, because we get information from surveys, but we also get information from conversations, and it's really helpful to hear from different perspectives and different viewpoints. But I do think, as Grace said, it might be also helpful as we are working through the process and making recommendations around where things might fall. A lot of it, there's research behind that we can share and you can consider too in looking at why we're making particular recommendations. So we would support that. I think generally when any of our curriculum committees make recommendations, we try to give all of the data, what parents said, that's usually reported in the presentation, what research we looked at, we try to give you as much information too, and can do that in advance for discussion prior to a vote.
Yeah, and going back to what Peter said in regards to I don't think you would just come up and like present it and expect us to vote. So just reiterating, like the more time we have to digest it and ask questions, because I feel like I have a hard time coming up with like thoughtful questions right at the moment. But
Yep,
if
absolutely.
I look at it for a month and I have time to consider it, and again, we can also, you know, pick off of the community who, you know, shares feedback to us. It's like maybe they have questions that they would rather us ask and present. So the more time, the better.
Oh my gosh, I have another update. You guys are falling asleep. Are we ready to talk about the Bay State shelter? Can we move on quickly? All right, so I just wanted to update you that we have, over the December break, we have had more students move into the Bay State, more families move into the Bay State shelter. The back modular unit opened, so more families have moved in. I sent out an update to the community. We, over the past 2 weeks, have had approximately 12 new students join. We are seeing more students exit, so that the overall number we have, I think it's between 32 and 33 students currently, divided between the two, evenly divided between the two schools. We are watching those numbers closely. We do have, as Miriam alluded to earlier, we hired staff in anticipation. We have two full-time L teachers and 2 full-time bilingual paras supporting the program, so we're appropriately staffed right now. We're continuing to monitor those numbers and working closely with the state to keep updated. As of the last update, we do have a meeting tomorrow with the state for an update, but as of the last conversation, it is still expected to close in June. We did complete the renovation project that was funded by the state to move our special education offices, which creates a small 3-office suite that we will use as an additional English language learner classroom this year to accommodate the growth in enrollment. And we will benefit that moving forward. As you know, we're out of space at H Holiday, so if the shelter closes as expected in June, that space will be available for us to use next year. At each holiday. Happy to take any questions, or if there's anything I forgot from the last update that you had, Lisa. But I think that covers it. Okay. That's it for me.
We have to vote on our minutes from December. We've all had a chance to review. I would be looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our December 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then the next school committee meeting is scheduled for February 11th. Does that still work for everyone? Let me know. Well,
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's a Tuesday, right? Yeah, it's a Tuesday.
and then is there anything else? Anyone?
It's a bold move at 9:24.
I just want to say really quick, thank you especially for people who came to listen and hear us talk and flesh out ideas. I'm proud to work with this committee because I think we all come here with different viewpoints and we all listen and we're all respectful and we're all working really hard to try and address everyone's concerns in our community. Doing that publicly, live, reacting in real time is not always easy, so we appreciate you coming and engaging and listening and letting us do the work. Sometimes it may get messy, sometimes it may go smoothly, but I think everyone here is looking out for the best interests of the kids in Norfolk, so thank you.
And thanks to our teachers here tonight who drew the short straw in the longest meeting. So,
Holy moly.
Thanks, Tracy and John.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
So,